Hello, my friends. Hope you're doing well. Mike Shreve here. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We're going to be talking about the Brainrot era and why I believe it is more important now to create a book or some similar deep form content than it probably has ever been. But in order to understand what the heck we're talking about, let's first identify what Brainrot content is and how we got here. To me, Brainrot is not necessarily a specific platform or a creator maximize attention. Whether that is on LinkedIn right now, using AI spam bots to spam, comment, AI written garbage posts, which I logged into LinkedIn the other day. That was a mistake. That place is a dumpster fire right now, being absolutely overrun by AI brain rot, or it's TikTok trying to make the most extreme, most hard hook, viral content, like this obsession with maximizing views rather than maximizing depth or meaning or understanding. And this isn't some whole, I'm trying to be holier than thou and I'm being frou-frou. This is tied to hard business reasons, measurable reasons, which we'll talk about. But it's whatever the opposite of trying to actually communicate with someone. That is brain rot. And right now, the marketplace is so flooded with this garbage. So I've been doing this for 20 years, and in 20 years, cycles come and go, right? There's been all sorts of different methods and strategies that people claim work, and then it floods the market, and then it dies down, and then somebody comes with something else, and it just goes in this cycle. I've never seen something so pervasive and people being so bought into what is so clearly not working for them. I think what's really interesting to me about the current brain rot era is how I don't want to say it, but maybe I'll just say it. I'm just going to be open and honest here on these podcasts, how embarrassing it is, how desperate people are coming across when they engage in brain rot content styling. Now, the question is, how do we get here? Because it's important to understand so that you can make sure you didn't accidentally fall into it. Because again, a lot of the people that are making this, I don't even know if they know they're making it. They just think, I was told I should do it, so I'm going to do it. All right, so like I said, 20 years in this thing, cycles come and go, gurus come and go. And right now, the guru of the month and the gurus of the month are saying content, which is just a rehash of the gurus from, say, 6 or 7 years ago. And the cycle will continue, and it will go to paid traffic, and then it will go to this, and then it'll go to webinars, and then it'll go to low tickets, and then it'll go to content, and it'll just go back and forth and back and forth. It's whoever has the attention in the moment, and it's always fleeting. Nobody stays in that attention for very long. What they do is they typically, not always, typically, they actually have some pretty good advice that works. That's at least why they're able to sustain some time in the limelight. And right now there's a couple of creators and influencers, and let's call them gurus, and they are, for the time being, mentioning some really good and important things about content, and they are using content to talk about content. So it's just meta advertising or meta marketing. And I don't mean Meta, the brand that owns Facebook and Instagram. I mean Meta, the concept. If I say, read my book, aren't books awesome? That's meta marketing. The same thing, and you could do this for all sorts of different niches. It's not unique to marketing. It's a very powerful principle, actually. It's this idea of, let me show you how I did this thing to you. Now you can do it to other people, right? Whether it's health and fitness or psychology or whatever. It's an old marketing and advertising move. But right now, there's a lot of influence and a lot of talk about content. And what always happens every single time, and will continue to happen for the rest of eternity, is that when somebody gets popular talking about something, you get a bunch of copycats also saying that same thing. So what happens is that individual, let's say person A, who's talking about content, who has a lot of influence, has this growing market of individuals who are trying to themselves make money off of that same concept because they see there's opportunity there. They look at the person, they say, whoa, that person's audience is huge, so I'm going to go say the same thing. So I'm going to talk about how great content is, and I'm going to have services about content, and I'm going to go do this thing. And so you, as an individual in this market, you're not just getting influenced by a single individual, but every time you open your laptop, every time you turn your computer on, flip the phone on, you're seeing this message just repeated over and over again by a bunch of people you don't even know. And so you think, oh, this must be the thing that I must do. Okay, and there's nothing wrong. Even up to there, even though I have lots of problems with copycats, and I think trying to go against whales in a marketplace is always a bad idea. And there's a whole bunch of business reasons why I think that's a terrible idea to be that person, and what their influence may or may not be, and whether or not they're actually selling you what they should be selling. That's a whole other conversation for a different time. But that's not why we have Brainrot content right now. We have Brainrot right now, and we're in the Brainrot era because of the next group of people. And the next group of people are the people who are now competing with the people who copied the guru. And these people have to undercut the people who have undercut the guru. So you've got double layered undercutting, which means there's even more desperation than ever. And so they focus on, and this happens every cycle, it will happen forever. Just learn to notice it and you can keep yourself safe. What this third group will focus on is getting the previous group's promises delivered, but without any effort and instantly. It's always no effort and instantly. So for example, if the original guru says, oh yeah, you need to make 6 8-hour podcasts a week, and that's the level you need to work at. The second group will say, here's how to make the podcasts. Here's how to keep your schedule to be able to sustain 8 hours of podcasting. Here's how to, and they use that core central idea to build their own offers. Then the third group comes and says, oh, you don't have to do 6 days of 8-hour podcasts. No, all you have to do is follow my secret formula, make one 30-second TikTok video, and you'll have 15 million views in the next 2 days. Oh, and by the way, AI will do it for you. That third group is primarily responsible for the current brain rot trend that we have. And the reason that it's their fault is because they are the most convincing of all three groups. So the original person says it takes a lot of work and is very hard, and here's how it all takes. The second group says, here's some tricks to help with that. The third group says, oh, forget all that. Get all those benefits with little to no work. Which is the most compelling? Which do you think is going to be most convinced to the business owner who's totally overworked, or the person who's trying to bank their entire company on making payroll in the next 2 weeks and doesn't actually have time to do 8 hours of podcasting and we're just desperate for a 15-second TikTok to catch fire and make all this money? And so this is how we've gotten here. It's important to understand how we've gotten here, because not once did I say that any of this was something that will help. You have to understand the messages that you're receiving when you're being marketed to, especially this side of the internet. So learning online tactics and trying to grow whether your coaching business, consulting business, professional services, etc. You have to be mindful, and you have to understand the source of the advice. Not all advice is right for you. And if you aren't sure where the advice came from, be careful. It might be the third group. And so what you have now is you have a lot of people saying that content needs to be more brain rot-ish because that's where the market is. But that is simply not true. Brain rot content typically requires a shorter attention span to consume it. So think of the ultra hyped up, ultra scandalous, ultra hooked TikTok video. It requires very little attention. And so by definition, brain rot content is not where the market is. It's where the shorter attention is. Now, it just so happens that most people in the world are trending towards shorter attention spans. But if a ton of people aren't your perfect fit for what you're trying to achieve, what does chasing them do for you? I'll give you a perfect example. A lot of my clients have some kind of business where they need their clients or their customers to pay attention in order to receive the deliverable. For example, they might have a coaching business, they might have a consulting business, they might be some kind of service professional, and they need some kind of extended commitment. Let's say they run ads for somebody. They need the person to make creative once a week or whatever it might be. They coach husbands through struggling marriages. They need the husband to show up once a week to the call and to do the homework and to the etc. You're an attorney. You need your clients to turn stuff in on time. Why would you go chase the group of people with shorter attention spans if you know a core and important piece of your business, in order for you to be successful, for your clients to be successful, that a shorter attention span would actually cause problems with your delivery? And see, that's just one example of being careful when taking advice, understanding the second order consequences. And the craziest thing is that you can actually see these same gurus and these same secondary gurus, the people copying the gurus, you can actually watch them learn this lesson in real time. So you may have seen this, you may not even realize what was going on, but how many times have you seen like a YouTube channel, for example, run by somebody, and they start with this like incredible content that is better than paid, like you would have paid for the content they were giving out. And then suddenly you could sense this decline in quality, and you sense that they're changing their strategy and maybe it's not for you anymore. And you go through this experience, and then all of a sudden you see a video posted, "I'm sorry, things are going to change," or some title like that, or they make an off-the-cuff comment in some other video, and it usually goes something like, "Look, we got off track and we started making videos that weren't really us," and they say it wasn't really attracting the right people, and blah, et cetera, et cetera. This happens all the time. Why? What were they doing? They were pursuing the wrong metric. They were just trying to get attention. They were going for the brain rot metrics. They were trying to push for bigger numbers. And they realized it's not what they wanted at all. It was so different than the kind of individual who comes for quality, the kind of individual who comes for true, whether it's transformation, information, belief change, etc. And what almost always happens is they end up going back to this deeper, more, sometimes longer, oftentimes longer form of content. There's a reason you're seeing right now all the gurus posting the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hour long videos. It's not just to show they have 6 hours of stuff to say. It's because the kind of person who sits down and watches 5, 6, 7 hours of video happens to make a very great buyer of anything else that is information-based, coaching, content, courses, consulting, anybody who's trying to actually learn, grow, implement, transform, all of those things. And so what ends up happening is when these gurus start chasing the brain rot type stuff, their audience becomes less responsive, because brain rot is about scrolling on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one. Just give me a hit, just give me a hit, just give me a hit. It's not about learning. It's not about depth. It's not about change. It's not about becoming something better. And I think if anybody really were to ask themselves and really were honest with themselves and asked what would be the biggest, best gift you could give yourself as a business owner, what would change everything, it would be to have better customers, better clients, better prospects, not necessarily more if there's no quality control. More bad prospects just clogs sales pipelines. More bad customers just causes higher refunds. More bad clients just creates burnout for your team. It creates problems in and of itself. Now you have this, more is very rarely the answer, except doing more of a thing that works. But a big part of more of the thing that works is that last part, the thing that works. That's the most important part. And very rarely is it brain rot that's actually working to get the people what they want. The other problem that I have as somebody who builds client brands and has built some of the biggest brands known right now in terms of personality brands, again, it's one of those things where I think earlier I said it's very embarrassing. It's embarrassing for me because when these individuals engage in brain rot content, it's embarrassing for me because I know how much work it takes to establish the reputation in the first place. And to stoop down to brain rot and to damage the brand. Because you have to understand, the brain rot game is all about who can be the most extreme, who can be the most stimulating. It's like the videos where someone's explaining something and then there's like a video game playing underneath it and then the face nodding at the same time and the AI captions and it's all just, it is brand damaging. And the example that I like to use is nobody wants to be the winner of the lowest prices unless you're a massive company like Walmart and can do all sorts of little side tricks. Everyone just, Walmart's great because they have low prices. No, they do all sorts of things. They have the government subsidize their workers and like all this stuff. There's a whole bunch of tricks that they use to be able to do that. Trust me, you don't want to try and do that because you don't know all the tricks that they have. And so you're going to race to the bottom and find out, that's why they use all of these tricks, basically. It's not true free market capitalism. It is utilizing all sorts of loops and all sorts of things. And so you, as a small business owner, if you're listening to this, you probably do less than $50 million a year, 25. You definitely do not want to be in the game of who has the lowest prices. So then why would you want to be in the game of who has the lowest quality audience? Because that's what brain rot content is. It is a dive to the bottom. Who can be the most extreme? Who can who can say the craziest thing next? But along with the example of nobody wanting to be the lowest price person, one of my early mentors says, what's worse than being the lowest price is being the second lowest price. Because now you don't even have the advantage in selling of having the lowest price. Here's where things for me get really embarrassing. And I feel very embarrassed for any personality brand who engages in this, because there's only a small handful of people who create brain rot content successfully. Almost everybody else falls short, which means they've sacked and ruining brand image, and they're not even getting the advantage of whatever virality they think is supposed to help them. Even though we know this virality is coming from people who would not make great customers, not make great clients. So this brain rot era is really damaging. And I understand its appeal, totally understand its appeal. If you are making content right now and you're making good, deep content, you think in your mind, if I go viral, it'll be the same quality traffic. Just I'll get 1 million hits instead of 100. That's just not how it works. So what's the antidote here? For me, my method of choice is the book. Why? Because it is everything that brain rot content isn't. It's as if you were to have created something completely and totally opposite. So let me just give you an example. So again, we talked about attention span. Somebody who sits through a 7.5 hour audio, is just a different type of person than somebody who spends all of their time doom scrolling through TikTok, and that's their preferred consumption method. I don't think one is better than the other necessarily. I don't think there's any moral judgment to be made. But as a business owner, who would I rather have on a sales call? The person who spent 7.5 hours going through my audio. Even if they watched every single TikTok video I ever made, and I made lots and lots of TikTok videos, it still would not be the same because it's depth of content. There are things you can do in a book that you just cannot do in a TikTok video or an AI LinkedIn post or a spam bot AI comment or whatever other brain rot content there is out there. There's a very specific reason I purposefully keep my podcasts long. If it's difficult to sit through an entire podcast where I'm giving away advice that I've acquired over 20 years of doing this and has made people millions and millions of dollars, I'm probably not going to be able to help you in other ways because of the focus and energy and effort that it takes to do the kind of thing that I help people with. It has no moral judgment on you as a person. It doesn't make me better than anybody. It doesn't make you better than anybody or worse than anybody. It's just a filter. I think people for attention, and I understand you're trying to pay your bills. Like, I need to get in front of people. I need to get in front of people. I need to get in front of people. What you need to do is create filters. And ironically, when you do create those filters, you end up attracting better people and more of them. And maybe we could do a whole podcast episode some other time about filter creation. But the short version is a book, super long form podcast, hour plus. Those are filters. The specific type of content that makes a good book is not necessarily the same kind of content that makes a good TikTok, one that would go viral. Why is that? They're different mechanisms entirely. But just think about it this way. So if you're looking to attract better customers and clients, let's say you're a coach and you need people to follow through and do homework, you should make reading and finishing your book a requirement before booking a call with you. That takes some courage to do. But if you're in a business right now where you're looking at your clients and you're just not really excited about them, or you're feeling strained in your sales process, or you feel like clients come in and buy from you and then their expectations are just completely out of whack, or you feel like you're having a harder and harder time getting consistent results for your clients, I would recommend in whatever process you have, I would recommend going so far as to say, put it before the sales call, but at the very least, make it a requirement that before you do any work for them, let's say they pay and they have an onboarding process, make part of the onboarding process to complete the book. And then in the book, make sure it's the right kind of book, make sure it's a good book, make sure it's not just a fluff book full of stories, and that's fun and that's great. There's nothing wrong with those books, but for a kind of book that will help you to grow your business or grow whatever you're doing, working with clients, making sure it has your framework, making sure they understand why you do things the way that you do, making sure that you have proof in your book so that you can establish the authority required to deal with clients, not to lord over them, but so that they'll listen to you when you say, I think we should do this. Again, my recommendation would be to put it before the sales call if you can, but in the onboarding process, that's also pretty powerful. It's a great way to level expectations. It's a great way to see if a client is going to play nice. If they say, look, here's something that's really interesting. If you say, okay, one of our required sort of pieces of onboarding is that you read this book. And they say, okay, great. And then let's say you give them some time and then you come back and you're like, how was the book? And they're like, oh, I didn't read it. What do you know about this client? They don't follow directions. And this is early in the client relationship. What do you think you can expect for the rest of that relationship? A realistic, logical person would say, oh, this client probably is not really ever going to listen to what I ask them to do. And I'm telling you, it is better to find that out in like the first week than 6 months later. in 20 years of doing client work. Trust me, get it done in the onboarding so then you can make some decisions and you can make some decisions together and say, look, it's really important that if you want the results that I want to give you, we have to have some kind of back and forth here of you being able to do the things that need to be done. But there's a second scenario here that is just the reality of doing client work. And that is if you were to ask someone to read a book as part of onboarding, and then they didn't, but they lied and told you that they did, what can you expect from that client for the rest of your engagement with them? Now, I'm not saying that a book will solve every problem that you've ever had. Okay, that's not at all what I'm saying. But compared to, say, somebody whose business really relies on brain rot content, you can see a lot of what is missing from adding depth into your business strategy rather than just speed. Another example, if you want calmer clients who are not all over the place all the time, changing their mind every 3 seconds, emotionally explosive, I have found that individuals who are able to sit with 7 to 10 hours worth of reading in general tend to be more emotionally even keeled. They tend to be able to sit through a decision they've made and see it to the end. Now, there are, of course, exceptions to every rule, and I am in no way saying that there, again, no moral judgments on any of this. But if we are talking about your peace of mind as a business owner who does client work, for example, the name of this company is called Peaceful Profits, not frenetic, burnout, unsustainable, just accept whoever gives you money and just clients run the show and you're just their little peon to be ordered about profits. You can have a much more stable group of clients if you start to incorporate the types of things that attract more stable individuals. I can tell you for a fact that brain rot content will very likely open the floodgates to a much wider range and variety. You'll simply have less control over who is coming in. Okay, so I've got 2 more points and then we'll wrap up today. This is something that I've been working on and just thinking about for probably the last decade. It's the trust equation. I believe that the trust equation is the antidote to brain rot. So it's not just books. So we sell book services. We help you to write books. Obviously, I'm incentivized to say books. But I think any content that is deeper than average, so going to your competitors, looking at what they're doing and saying, how can I go deeper? How can I be more full in what I'm presenting? How can I give more? How can I present this to people that need to have some kind of attention span or have some kind of seriousness or have some kind of ability to consume it, especially if I'm in the business of selling content, ideas, I need compliance in my client, whatever. That's the thinking process to go through, right? Book is, I genuinely believe, the best form of that, but long form podcast, that also works as well. Longer videos, etc. Long form written content. The problem that you have to understand, though, is that not only has brain rot done all of these, I think, all this measurable damage to the human brain, it has also created an increase in distrust. It's that short trying to get you a hook. To make good brain rot content, you have to be extreme. You have to make big claims. You have to lean into that third group I was talking about. All the benefit for none of the work. All the benefit instantly. It's that kind of content. And when that starts to flood the market, it is a content form that lends itself towards letting down the audience by its design. If you keep getting more and more extreme, like you leave the bounds of reality, and you're now essentially educating this whole audience on just the craziest ideas. It's the constant make 2 million in 30 seconds with this AI hack stuff. And people try it because they're desperate. They want it to work. They are pulled in by the hook, and then they try it, and it turns out you don't make 2 million in 30 seconds. And it just builds up this distrust. And so if you're engaged in this kind of content and you're trying to compete with these individuals, you're essentially competing amongst a group of people who just don't believe it anymore. It's just the eye roll type stuff at this point. Oh, that again. And what a terrible place to don't cast your pearls before swine type of situation. Don't put your best self in that group. Don't try to compete there. There's nothing worthwhile to capture. There's a reason, like I said, all these people who preach content or have these big channels, they keep coming back to this deeper long form stuff because they've dipped their toe in that audience, and it turns out it's not worth it. There's nothing there except distrust and shorter attention span and all of those things. So how do we make sure that the content we're creating, again, whether it's a book or podcast or whatever, how do we make sure that it follows the trust equation? What is the trust equation? The antidote to brain rot. It's very simple. You need a transaction, a high quality transaction. You then need time, and then you need depth of specifically belief change. This is how you get the most trust possible. So for example, transaction. Most people, their transaction with brain rot content is simply moving their thumb up on their phone. Very low transaction. Almost no commitment whatsoever from the viewer or from the other party in this transaction. You in this transaction probably worked your backside off to make that little TikTok or to make that little video or to make that whatever. But the other party in the transaction, almost no commitment. So from the get-go, you are on the back foot in this trust equation. Now compare that, for example, to somebody committing to listening to an hour-long podcast. Okay, that's a much bigger commitment in the transaction. You've put together all these ideas, you're presenting these ideas, they are willing to sit down for a long time, they have more skin in the game. They are more interested in this turning out well because of how much skin they have in the game, right? They're bought into it. Take it up another level, selling a book. This is one of the highest forms of entry-level transaction that you can make at scale in today's marketplace. And what is this transaction? You have poured your heart and soul into this thing. That's your side of the transaction. Their side of the transaction is that they have purchased it. They are bought in to this thing working out. And what does that mean? It means that it's not like booking a free sales call where you're very skeptical and you almost don't even want it to work out. You're like, I don't really want to be sold. When you buy something, when you buy it, you're buying it with the hope that it turns out well. What's another way of saying that? Your trust is significantly higher. Your skepticism is significantly lower. Your defenses are down. You are open. And this is one of the reasons why books are so great. Look, I sell books for a living. I help people publish their books, whatever. But I'm the first to not be overly romantic about books. Books are just a medium for containing content. It just so happens that books, in the way that society reveres them, the way that people view them, the fact that they are a paid transaction, it is the best place to put your content because the consumers of that content are going to be the most receptive because The transaction part of the trust equation, that in and of itself is already incredibly high. They've literally paid to consume it. They want it to work out. Okay, so that's one part of the equation. The second equation then is time. So as a business owner, and I totally get this, we all want to rush the trust process, right? That's what we want. We want people to trust us instantly. We want people to believe us. We want them to just trust me, man. I'm a good person. And that's the approach that we take. The reality is that most people need some kind of time before they fully trust someone else. No matter what we do, no matter how many testimonials, no matter how good our offer is, no matter how many different things we're doing, there needs to be some element of time for most of the market. Now, of course, you have the 95-5 rule where 5% of any given market has a bleeding neck problem and they'll buy whatever you put in front of them. But for 95% of the market, they need some time. And a TikTok video is not very much time. 30 seconds. A Brainrot comment on LinkedIn, 15 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds. Poorly written AI posts, they purposely write them 5, 10 seconds long. All Brainrot content is super short on time. And you say, well, my Brainrot content, like lots of people watch a lot of them. Okay, cool. That's fine. So 30 seconds at a time compared to my 7.5 hour audiobook. How many TikTok videos are they going to have to watch before they've spent 7.5 hours with you? And the answer is a metric ton, more than you've created. And you know from your own metrics that more than one, because that's what Brainrot content is. It's not the same as building a relationship with the viewer base. Now you compare that to a 7.5 hour audiobook. By the end of that 7.5 hours, people feel like they know you, especially if your book is well written and you have personal stories and you do it correctly and you go through the process, you help them to have experiences, do exercises, they experience growth themselves or whatever it is, they will come out the other end of that and they're like, wow, if you consider like hanging out with your friends, that could be a whole weekend for some people. 4 hours on Saturday, 4 hours on Sunday. Hey, I just spent the weekend with my friends. It's a significant amount of time. Now, if you're really smart, and if you're like some of my past clients, like John C. Maxwell, and you write more than 100 books, and you have audiobooks for all of them, and people read multiple books, you can see how individuals who have this deeper kind of content just have an unfair advantage when it comes to building trust. One of our competitors likes to try and make fun of Peaceful Profits, and they say that our books are just funnels in disguise. That's great. I love it. Thank you. That's a great tagline because that's exactly what we try to do. We try to create books that build trust. It is a funnel in disguise. It moves people from stranger to somebody who wants to buy from you. It's the transaction. It's the time that somebody will spend with you. And then here's the third one. It is the depth of belief change. So most short form content will get you a nice little nod. Sort of, that was interesting, that kind of thing. But think about in your own life or in the lives of people, how many people's lives have been fundamentally altered by a book. Or again, by maybe there's some long YouTube videos that this has happened for people, but certainly there's countless examples where somebody has read a book, they closed the book, and they were not the same person anymore. This is the depth of belief change that I am imploring you to deploy in your business, whether you do it with us or somebody else, or you don't use a book or you do the book or whatever. But understand that to create depth of belief change, depth of transformation, depth of change in somebody, it requires information, time, repetition, exercises, application, story, entertainment. There's so many things that go into an asset to be able to do that. And then to be able to do that at scale, that in my opinion, after 20 years, a book is the best form of that application at scale. at scale. Now, obviously, the actual best form of doing that would be to spend one-on-one individual time with people for a really long time. You know, the story of, say, for example, somebody who goes and lives with a mentor for 30 days, like lives at their house. Of course, that person's going to go through some huge time with their mentor, huge depth of belief change. The transaction's huge. They uprooted their whole life to be there. They're way bought into making sure it happens, but that's not scalable. A book is, in my opinion, the best way to scale the trust equation. You can get the transaction, the time, and the depth of belief in the hands of thousands of people, and the outcome will be significantly more than millions of viral views. So the lesson is that the content form or the content medium dictates the value of the outcome of the content you create. In other words, whatever you want the result of your content to be, how you present that content, the form you choose to put it in, will change the outcome you get for the same exact message, for the same exact stuff that you're saying. So here's just my parting thought for you here. One of the very first books that I ever read getting into business was a book called Zag. I think the subtitle was The Number One Strategy of High Performance Brands. It was published in 2006, I believe. I was homeless in 2007. It was while I was homeless that I tried to start my writing business. And one of the books that was at the library was Zag. And it is a very simple book. I recommend everybody read it at least once a year. It's one of the best business books I've ever read. It is something that every time I'm reminded of it, it helps me to be significantly more profitable. It helps me to be more grounded. It helps me to fend off ethically questionable competitors. It just helps in a lot of different ways. And I have found that the most money I've ever made has been when I was zigging while everyone else was zagging. The least amount of money I've ever made was trying to figure out what everybody else was doing and then trying to do that. So if for no other reason than to follow this zig while everybody else is zagging concept, write a book. Because a lot of people, and I don't really fully understand, this is one of the weird trends to me that I still don't understand why it hasn't already imploded, but it's continuing on, I think, out of desperation, where more and more people are just digging deeper and deeper holes into this brain rot content, not seeing the results. There's a big company right now that helps people go viral, and most of the reviews are, I went viral and it did nothing. But I'm going to keep trying to go viral because they keep telling me it'll turn into something. And it's like a casino effect almost, the slot machine effect. I could see why it would pull you in. I could see, if having worked on a bunch of personal brands, when they get those first viral hits, it really does feel good. But if it doesn't move the needle, are you really going to spend your life doing stuff that doesn't move the needle? I don't know. I might be too much of I'm the kind of guy who might worry a little bit too much about what I spend my life doing or not doing. I just very much believe that I've got a limited time on this earth and I don't want to waste it doing stuff I don't have to do. So while everyone else is chasing that kind of brain rot stuff, this is the perfect time to write a book, because the market is getting tired of it and they're looking for people who are willing to take them deeper, right? It's this whole thing of, everyone was so worried about the information age and, oh my gosh, everyone was going to be out of business when the internet comes on. And certainly businesses did get knocked out. I don't want to minimize that. But if everything's free on YouTube, how can I ever sell courses, or how can I ever sell coaching, or how will I ever sell my professional services? Won't everybody just file their own divorce and do their own dentistry? There's a little shout out to Bob Mortimer, one of my favorite comedians. The answer is that no, that what actually happened is, as the information increased, people realized that you need more than information. They wanted what? Depth. They wanted hands-on. They wanted help and assistance. They wanted more than just Google answers. And I think that's happening big time right now, is that you've got a lot of people who are making a lot of floofy surface level content in the Brainrot division. And all it's doing is driving up the demand for people who are tired of it, and they actually want to change. They actually want something to happen. They want some kind of transformation. They want their problem to be solved. They want to be in a different place than they were when they got online and started doom scrolling. And I have found that my clients who are in the kind of markets where it's really bad, because there's definitely some markets where brain rot is just really bad, their book is like a breath of fresh air. So the challenge that I'm giving to you is to be the person in your market who has done the harder thing and find the discipline that you need, to find the help that you need, to find the ability to stick through to seeing the end of your book, because the outcome for you will be tremendous and the outcome for your readers will be tremendous. And my challenge beyond that even is just to try to be the person who wants better things for yourself. I found that the business owners who start thinking in terms of, actually, what kind of clients do I want to work with? Actually, what do I want my sales process to feel like? Actually, what kind of impact do I want to have? I found that those business owners tend to make significantly smarter and less desperate decisions, and they don't tend to get themselves tied up in these flavor of the month tactics. So that would be my second challenge to you. If you need help with my first challenge, if you'd like some help writing a book, we'd love to help you. We can write it for you. We can write it with you. We can sell it for you. We can sell it with you. peacefulprofits.com/call. Highly recommend adding a book to your business to zig against the zagging of the brain rot content that's happening right now. All right, my friends, that's it. We'll see you in the next one.